So AI is now here, but not necessarily to stay.
Are you sure?
I don't think so. I don't think it is here to stay, given that there've already been comments from the West indicating that there are problems with use of AI and the way it is being used to influence people, the way people behave and all that. So one of the challenges we are going to have is with AI generated images, AI generated videos, and all that now being used to misinform people.
Good afternoon, my name is Jane Jueni and you are listening to the Law and Justice Show here on Haki FM, the oasis of justice. Remember, we are tuning in at hakifm.hakiinstitute.or.ke, and you can catch us on our social media platforms, that is Haki FM1 on X, Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. And with me in studio is Wakili Timothy Mushigi. We are talking about 2027 countdown. We are talking about the elections, the IEBC, and what does the law say about all this. Wakili, karibu sana. Welcome back.
Asante.
Yeah, now let's get into the whole story of campaigns. And under the Kenya law, when does the official campaign period begin? And what does the law say about activities that could amount to unlawful campaigning? Where do we draw the line when it comes to campaigning?
Very well. So the official campaigns are, or the regulation of campaigning is first based on of course there is a constitutional provision on the regulation of campaigns. I just want to take you back to 88. 4, and the specific provision is article regulation. Yes, the regulation of money that may be spent by or on behalf of a candidate. So that's one of the regulation of campaigning is provided under article 88 and the legislation, but specifically, when you have a by-election, IEBC issues a calendar on when candidates can now begin, active voter mobilization in their own favor. But for purposes of the 2027, and according to the calendar of IEBC, the official campaigns open on May 29th, because that would be the last date for nomination of candidates. So if you look at May 29, it's about 60...
We're talking about May 29th of 2027.
Yes.
Wow.
So you have 30 days in June, you have 31 days in July, that makes 61 days, 2 more days in May, 63, all the way up to August 7th, which will be around 48 hours to the election date. So that would be the official campaign period. So that means everything else that the political parties are doing as campaigns, that would amount to illegal campaigns. However, most of these political parties, when they go to the different meetings, you will hear them say it is a meet the people tour. The other ones are calling them empowerment forums. The other ones are calling them, it is a political party mobilizing voters for, membership. So it's a membership drive. So you see, then, and if you are to apply the strict reading, then you wouldn't pin them as.
Because my other question was going to be, Wakili, does the law clearly stipulate this is what amounts to a campaign? Whether you want to call it a tour, whether you want to call it a homecoming, 1, 2, 3 activities are defined as campaigns. Because now if that is not clear, then you cannot go ahead and blame politicians for doing what they do and say that they are campaigning unlawfully. You get my point?
Yes, unfortunately for our context is that we have not had, first the rules are made largely by the political class. Number two, we have not had what we would call very sane way of doing our politics. And I could be very wrong, so some of our listeners could think, that is an upper deck sort of an argument. Because I would wish that our politicians are able to engage people and use logic. Let's debate. This is the need of the people. This is how you have allocated resources. I would be more interested to participate in some of these meetings if we are able to have not necessarily a one-on-one, but a conversation. People are able to ask questions. But what you see even when you talk about mobilizing party recruitment and meet the people tour and empowerment,
Homecoming.
It's usually
yeah.
a politician or several of them now doing slogans and all that. So the way the law is framed, you wouldn't pin that. When they say it is a meet the people tour, you wouldn't say that that is a campaign. Because again, if you have to challenge that event and say so and so is campaigning, you would have to go and, okay, let's read the rules. And you see, you would actually lose when we read the rules and find that the rules do not include a meet the people tour as campaign. So there's a petition that was filed by Kituo cha Sheria in 2022. So it was Kituo cha Sheria versus IEBC and others. And the whole issue in the petition was the illegal campaigns that were going on at the time outside the framework that is established by the IEBC. And so that decision came the other day. And what the court said is it gave the Attorney General and the IEBC an opportunity within 12 months to go develop a coherent framework to guide the whole campaigning business. Because what I think you and I would essentially know that we have been in campaigns for the longest.
Yeah.
We should actually say we were in a campaign mode from
the moment this government took office.
Yes.
Yeah.
And ideally that is not how we should be running a country. It should be that those who are elected into office, from the lowest level to the highest level, go and do what needs to be done, implementing the mandate of the office. Then when we get to near the election time, I mean, all of us should not even be thinking about who to vote for. Perhaps that conversation should only come to us as maybe December, January. Then we are thinking, wait a minute, what have you been doing to tell us now you want you want us to vote for you? That idea is what should be happening. Unfortunately, we have been in a campaign mode. So we have had illegal campaigns from, was it September 2022? And as we speak, there are already people who are discussing the next election. So assuming we stick to the current framework and that the question of the judgment that we were discussing earlier doesn't become a big issue, so that we are talking of 27 to 32 to whatever, there are already people who are telling us about 2032. And then you ask yourself, we have not even planned properly the 2027 elections.
Yeah.
Why are you telling us about?
2020.
Because that in itself tells you that as soon as we are done with the 2027 elections,
we are back.
whether the current president retains his seat or we have a new one, there's someone is going to start campaigns immediately. And I think philosophically that is intended to distract people from focusing on developing themselves. Because when parties or when communities are arguing where should the next president be coming from, we are really just saying that elections are more important than our everyday life, than improving matters, healthcare, water, whatever.
Wakili, we have had by-elections in the recent past. And the most popular one was Olkalau. Popular by the virtue of what we saw going on there. People were being given boats, shoes, mattresses, cooking gas. And now I will want to understand what exactly constitutes to voter bribery under the Kenya law, and where is the line drawn between legitimate political campaigning and an electoral offense?
First, if we look at the bribe, what is a bribe? It is an inducement to act in a particular way. So voter bribery then is you're inducing people to vote in a particular way. So from the observations we made in Olkalau, a lot of what was going on there, you could call it voter bribery, because the parties were seeking to induce people to not even engage from a logical perspective, but go vote for a particular candidate because of what you have received. For those who read the Bible, they know that once an individual accepts a bribe, then your position on a particular issue becomes distorted, because you're supposed to again account to the person that gave you the bribe. So it distorts judgment. That is what the Bible says. So ideally we should not be. So now what would we say is voter bribery? Now, if you go out giving people money first so that they can attend your meetings, and then you're giving them money so that they can vote for you, that is voter bribery, and it would be illegal. It would be an election offense. If you're giving people other items like the ones that were being given to citizens in Olkalau, that would be voter bribery, so that you're inducing them to vote in a particular way, but you're also interfering with their independent judgment. In a proper way to campaign, perhaps would be, we saw some of that in that constituency, and we've seen it in a few other constituencies, where it is the citizens who give the politician money for campaigns. Because the bigger problem that we have is, if I am running for office and I come and give the people in a particular constituency money, there should always be a question. So where are you getting the money from? And what does it mean after we elect you into office? Because if you're getting money from certain sponsors, those sponsors, do you have a pledge to them that you're going to pay it back? And how are you going to pay it back? Because when we look at your mandate, if you're a member of parliament, the mandate would be legislation, representation, oversight, all that. So where are you going to get the money from? If you're looking at the president, you're receiving campaign funds from some place, and that money is what you're giving us. What is tied to this money? How are you going to pay it back? So that if we are able to engage as citizens on that question, that every time you receive a bribe from a politician, whether it is a gas cooker or it is just cash, even as low as 20 shillings, that 20 shillings we need to know where it came from and what is the cost. You're distorting our judgment first, but on the other hand, we have to ask, what are we going to pay after this?
And Wakili, what are the legal consequences that these candidates or political parties face or should face when they engage in voter bribery? And I ask this because going back to the same Olkalao elections, the voter bribery was open. It was out there in the public. Even some politicians themselves saying that I had to go back home and get more money. It was out there, and they were even saying it themselves. What legal consequences should these people face? And if that's the case, why haven't we seen people be arrested and all that by now?
Maybe before I go to that one for the legal consequences, we actually just go back to that constituency of Kalau.
Yeah.
When it was Kipipiri, it was a larger Kipipiri. There was a time when in the 90s, the then government, the then president had even visited, and they had brought in electricity poles, because the idea was that as soon as you vote for this candidate, we are going to ensure that you have access to electricity connection. But that was taken away as soon as they failed. So it tells you that it was a bribe, but coming from as a development project. So that aside, in terms of the consequences, first we look at who should stop voter bribery. And who is the referee here? Our referee is IEBC. And so IEBC should be able to stop voter bribery. Whether it is the candidates directly doing it or it is through proxies, they should be able to identify who was doing what and stop them. One of the ways in which you stop such candidates, giving a bribe is a criminal offense, and voter bribery is an electoral offense. So IBC should be able to take action against these individuals and have them charged before an election court, depending on the magnitude of the offense. So ideally IBC should do that. So charge them in court, and if you have extreme cases, then you should not have these candidates running, because we go to the fundamental question of where the candidate is getting the resources from so that they can do voter bribery. So if the candidate is money laundering, then you see you have other offenses that are being committed along the way.
Yeah.
And the police and EACC ought to be able to step in. And in my view, that is where the whole issue of campaign financing then comes in.
I go ahead to ask again, why haven't we seen these people being arrested? Why are people still walking out here, yet they took part in voter bribery? We even had an expose of how money was dished out, who was dishing out the money. I remember the expose was done by NTV. Why haven't we seen people being arrested, arraigned in court for these activities? And Wakili, what precedence does this set for the next year's general election? Because this was just a small by-election. What are we looking at when we head to the general elections?
Perhaps it's not really a legal question why we haven't seen actions being taken, because we have a fundamental philosophical problem. First, of how we have run our elections over the years, even with a better constitutional framework than before 2010. The fundamental problem is we introduced money into elections in a very huge way after, especially within the 2007, now going to 2013, now money became a big part of how you go about elections. And now, unfortunately, we did not tame it then. So then, what does it do? So we are not setting a precedence, actually. We are only doing what has been done before. And so the fundamental problem is the moment you fail to punish or to stop an illegal action at the very beginning, then it means you have already set a precedent. So then people would ask this, and let's just use the political establishments that have been there. If you did not stop the Mwai Kibaki people in 2007 from giving money, giving those bribes, why would you stop the other side? Back then, I think we had ODM running against PNU of Kibaki. If you did not stop them, why are you attempting to stop us now? Then we come to the 2012-2013 election cycle. We had Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto running. At that time, their own teams were also doing the same things. And on the other side, we had Odinga and his team. So all of them then would give bribes because you have already set a precedent. So what actually changed, what has been changing over time is how much money is spent. Then we come to the 2017 election cycle, again the same thing. We go to 2022, again the same thing. So when you see that precedent, so unless we now arrest it now with the campaign financing framework, we might not have an end to it. So I think when we get to discuss ceilings, the spending limits, you see, then we are able to say, you can't tell us you spent more than this. So you have to be able to show where the money came from and where it went. Because, for example, because that's where the issue of bribery comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If to win a seat for an MCA, let's say there are specific costs. You need to pay the fees, they're not fees. You need to deposit certain money to the party for purposes of nomination. You need to pay agents, you need to pay for your posters, and there is a nomination fee that is paid to IBC. I'm just making an assumption, I'm not very sure there is a nomination fee.
Yeah.
But when you look at all this and you itemize, let's say it cost you 500,000. So the next question is, why did you need to have 10 million to run for? What was the money for? So, and if you go beyond those limits, then you have to see whether you are bribing people, and if you are bribing people, you committed an election offense, and so action should be taken against the individual through the police, and then they are taken to court, and the criminal trial process then takes place.
Okay, I want us to take another short break, and when we come back, we will conclude this discussion, and of course we'll talk about the issue of hate speech, misinformation, because we're clearly, we are at a time where AI is taking shape in our country, and I'm just very eager to see how things will be manipulated going forward. So has the law made provision for this, and what are we supposed to expect in the coming days? It is exactly 29 minutes past 12 noon. You are listening to the Law and Justice Show with me, Tainjuini, and I'm with Wakili Timothy Mishigi in studio. We're talking about elections, IBC, and the law. Keep sending in your questions, comments at Haki FM1 on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Wakili will be answering them in a few. In the meantime, 3 minutes to 1 p.m. Good afternoon. My name is Terry Njoini, and this is Haki FM, the Oasis of Justice. You are listening to the Law and Justice Show, and with me in studio is Wakili Timothy Mwishigi. We want to conclude this discussion about the 2027 countdown. We're talking about elections, IEBC, and the law. Where does the law come in all this? Keep sending in your questions, comments. We see them at Haki FM1 on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Remember, we are streaming live on TikTok, and you can listen to us at hakifm1.hakiinstitute.or.ke. Wakili, before we went for the break, I was talking about right now AI has come into play a lot in what we do, and it is safe to assume that it will also be used during the campaign period. And now I want to understand, has the law made provisions for this, and how does the Kenya law address things like misinformation, hate speech, intimidation, and other forms of conduct that are likely to undermine a free and fair election?
I think when we look at the spectrum of the issues you have raised, misinformation, so AI is now here, but not necessarily to stay.
Are you sure?
I don't think so. I don't think it is here to stay, given that there've already been comments from the West indicating that there are problems with use of AI and the way it is influencing, it is being used to influence people, the way people behave and all that. So one of the challenges we are going to have is with AI generated images, AI generated videos, and all that now being used to misinform people. In fact, I saw a short clip that when you look at it, if you do not look at it keenly, you would think, I need to go and revisit the speech that was being read by some chap somewhere yesterday. Because the way someone has manipulated that, and some people could believe that this is what he was saying. But because they do not have, say, the opportunity to go listen to the entire speech, so they would be misled. So that's the first thing. So the way we do not have a specific legal provision on how to apply AI and how to deal with the misinformation that could be generated. It has a good side, it would be easier to generate posters for candidates who do not have a lot of resources, but also we have to have a mechanism for dealing with misinformation from the use of these technologies. When you look at the law as far as hate speech, the intimidation, use of technology are concerned, then we have a bit of a broader legal framework. Because one, we have data protection law, and the question is, so if you attend a campaign rally, does that give, so you see data protection, there is the question of whether you attending the campaign means that you have consented to having your image used to propagate the interests of that political party. How should the images be taken? So what if your attendance also means that a particular age group, let's say a particular age group, then is endorsing that particular candidate, so the candidate gets money because he is able to mobilize a certain group of people. So there's a Data Protection Act, and I know the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner would be interested to just review how the data that is being collected from different people is being used for purposes of political campaigns, so that if it is negatively used and there is no consent, then it takes action. You also have the NCIC Act, which establishes the commission, and the commission has an obligation to ensure that we do not have candidates going out, spewing hate speech. And when any hate speech happens, that NCIC is also seen as being neutral, not telling us that today we have gone out to arrest Terry because she was heard saying ABCD, and then the next day we are not able to see the same commission arrest your producer, because now they're saying the producer, we don't have anyone who has reported. So no one reported when Terry was saying all the bad things, but they went and arrested the person. Then on the other hand, your producer also says the same things, but the producer is not arrested because no one has complained. So the ideal approach is that if we have candidates, right now we don't have candidates, we have aspirants. So if aspirants are using hate speech, we should be able to see NCIC taking action against these characters. When it comes to other conduct that is criminal in nature, we should be able to see the police taking action. And the police do not take action because the candidate belongs to one political leaning and not the other. They should be neutral, so that even aspirants who are supporting the sitting president and they go out of the way, they need to be punished. And perhaps, we do not make the presumption that they have, that we convict them, but we make the presumption, they still retain their presumption, the presumption of innocence, but action needs to be taken. So, including how AI is going to be used to manipulate. Although there has been a challenge on the Computer Misuse Act and Cybercrimes Act, there ought to be a formula that the police are able to use. The NCIC, the data protection are able to use to ensure that we reduce misinformation. I'm sure you may have observed some clips that are AI generated, showing some two fellows who have been in a particular office, punching one another.
Yeah.
And you see, there are people who do not, they have smartphones, but the smartphones don't have certain capabilities. And so some when they see it, they get swayed. They think, oh, now the country is burning.
Yeah.
But maybe that is not the truth. And of course, the manipulation of images, you will see a candidate, you only have like 100 people attending a rally, but then you have images being manipulated to show that you had so many people. Yet, what we say in Kiswahili, kwa ground,
it will be different. Yeah. And Wakili, we have a history as a country of contesting election, especially the presidential election. We are known for that specifically, where the loser does not take it in stride and they more often than not contest. So maybe you can shed light on the legal mechanisms that exist for challenging electoral violations and elections, that is before, during, and after elections.
Very well. First, ideally, if you lose an election, whether it is the lowest level or the highest, and we can all see, or when you look at how the whole process was carried out, it was done fairly. You should just go home. If you want to run for the next one, wait for the next one, but not hold the country in ransom or hold the constituency in ransom because you felt that you were supposed to be the people's candidate. But for candidates to accept that they have lost, then the elections ought to be conducted in a very transparent manner. So before elections, we ought to see a very transparent conduct on the part of the IEBC, which is the umpire here, and on the part of the aspirants or candidates. During the voting process, we should not see voter bribery happening at polling stations or violence that prevents people from exercising their rights. And so what the courts have done, and I read a statement by the CJI the other day indicating that the judiciary has also set in motion an election preparedness framework, including, so the Chief Justice will be gazetting magistrates, will be indicating if you have any issues related to the conduct of aspirants, candidates in the run-up to the next election, that they have an election court already set up, and that there is requisite training that is conducted for how the matters ought to be handled. As we already know, the Constitution makes provision for the timelines. So it sets the upper limit for the timelines for resolution of election disputes. So if, for example, we talked about voter bribery earlier, if you have an aspirant or a candidate arrested for voter bribery, you cannot be resolving that matter after elections. Mm-hmm. It ought to be dealt with very early on, so that we know whether the punishment is to bar them from running. The same way that if an MP is disputing election post the election, an election outcome, that you cannot resolve, you cannot have that matter running for more than 6 months before the High Court. So you see, because of those timelines, and even the appearance that we are being fair, you charge someone for voter bribery, you complete the process very early on. Because again, the Constitution makes provision for, unless the disqualifications for candidates. So you do not become a candidate if you have been convicted for an offense, and then the sentence is longer than 6 months, but then it puts a caveat that unless this person has exhausted all the appeals. So ideally, it should be, we are dealing with the problems within very, very strict timelines. I think the last thing is just how we go about these issues. Because when you look at the offense, some of the offenses are related to election, to the conduct before, during, and after elections. The question is, if you go to if all of them have to be handled through the criminal justice system, how is that the criminal justice system, how does it conduct itself? And you see, when you charge someone for a criminal offense, it means you have to provide evidence and proof beyond reasonable doubt, and that obligation would not go to the other side. So we ask ourselves, is that the only way to deal with those concerns? Or we could do a different approach, which is go to punish some of the individuals through an administrative process, because then the threshold for punishment goes down. So if, for example, we are fining an individual for conducting campaigns early, it does not, or for voter bribery, then we will say we have videos and we know they are not manipulated, so we are punishing you by way of a fine. Now, the threshold for such a process is not the same as that of a criminal trial process.
Okay. Now, Wakili, I want us to take some questions that we have. We have like some 8 minutes left. And I have one gentleman by the name Tom from Kikuyu. He's saying, please ask Wakili what is the role, what is the functions and significance of forming coalitions?
Forming coalitions.
Yes, why do political parties need to come together and form coalitions?
I think the first thing is, if you look at, especially the presidential election, the threshold set by the Constitution is pretty high, of the 50% plus one vote. Previously, we used to have what we call first past the post. And in the first past the post, it meant that you could have 5 candidates. Each gets around 18 to 22%. So the candidate that hits, say, 25%, then becomes the winner.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at what is 25%, and we can do the math of the potential number of voters now, be around 22 million. So 25% of 22 million, you're only looking at about 3 million people. So would that represent the will of the citizens? Maybe not. So the threshold under the 2010 Constitution was raised slightly higher to be able to have candidates get a more holistic mandate. So there is the number of votes, the 50% plus one, or for the votes cast. Then there is another threshold on votes cast in a majority of the counties. So you have to get 25% of all the votes cast in more than half, so makes it 24. So the reason parties have to form a coalition is because maybe a candidate could be popular in, say, 15 out of the 47 counties. The next candidate is popular in another 8. There is another one popular in another 3. So to be able to cross the threshold of 24 counties, then you may need to have a coalition. The other thing is, you could actually cross the threshold of 24 counties, but not in terms of the total vote cast. Because, for example, there are 5 counties which have over 1 million, slightly over 1 million. So what if you lose in those counties? So it means you could get counties that, if you put 24 counties, they do not go to half of the potential 22 million. So it's again the question of the individual voters. Where are they coming from?
Yeah.
Do they come from your 24 counties, or you may need to have another candidate that helps you garner the votes? And of course, the last one is, when you look at that popularity, you also have to consider the number of MPs that you will have at the National Assembly and at the Senate, because to govern would require legislation. So, and you can only get through your legislation if you have the requisite numbers. Otherwise, you're going to struggle with mobilizing votes for particular legislation. So coalition and what we have in our legal framework is that we could have pre-election coalitions or post-election coalitions. So the candidates parties can determine which is the best time to have a coalition. But maybe what becomes tricky is the presidential election, because what if you determine you want to have a post-election coalition, but that means you will not have, your candidate will not win in the first round.
Yeah.
So, and you see in terms of bargaining, what concessions do you make? It may be more costly to make a post-election coalition where your presidential candidate has not won in the first round. So you'll be engaged in negotiations, but at the same time you're negotiating, you're preparing for a repeat election.
Very well, Wakili. I want to take this chance to thank you so much for making time. We have had a full circle discussion about the 2027 countdown elections, IEBC, and the law. And I want to thank you so much for that. And I also want to thank you, the listener, for tuning in from 11 a.m. all the way to this time. We do not take it for granted. In case you missed this discussion, we'll have a recording of the same on our YouTube platform, that is at Haki FM1. And we always do this show on Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. where we bring in a guest and we talk about current affairs, we talk about the Constitution, and we talk about the law. Until next Wednesday, my name is Jane Juini. You have been listening to Haki FM, the Oasis of Justice. Keep it Haki FM, keep it the Law and Justice Show. Thank you.